Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I did it in order that time. Welcome to Ian Zev's Life. Uh, Happy you're here. Unless you're going through some sort of mental health crisis in your life, in which I ask you to please turn off this video and dial 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Your life is important to people, even if you don't think so, and you don't want to consider a permanent solution to a temporary problem. You're loved, you're needed. Okay? So we're just going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the it wasn't a press conference, the sit-down interview yesterday with Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and Dana Basch from CNN. And I'm going to talk about what I thought. I'm not going to do like a play-by-play. If you want that, watch it. But the overall tenor and how I think it will affect the election, and then we'll see what's going on Orange Insane Man side. And we'll wrap it up because this is going to be a quicker one today. I know yesterday I just rambled on for an hour. I'm feeling a little better. Still going through it, but I'll be all right. Okay, first question. Did she take too long to do a sit-down interview and or press conference? I don't know. I think there's valid arguments that she did, and there's valid arguments that she didn't. And until this election is over, we won't know. Had this been like a regular presidential election, like a full primary season, then I would say, yeah, of course she took way too long. But this was like the candidacy that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, remember how emphatic Joe Biden was, like 3 days before he withdrew from the race, that he was staying in. So no one's ever seen a presidential campaign put together at this rate. So I don't know. Like, did she wait too long given these circumstances? I don't know, because these circumstances have never happened before, and I don't have a crystal ball. Well, I do have a crystal ball. But for some reason, it's just not giving me that answer. So, did she take too long? Time will tell. I'm not willing to say one way or the other, because this is new territory for everybody. Okay. Now, when I said everyone gets a crystal ball but me, well, I guess I borrowed one then, because would you believe I predicted how every single one of my politically oriented friends would think about the sit-down interview before it happened. And guess what? The Trump supporters thought she bombed and just did miserable. And the Harris supporters thought she knocked it out of the ballpark. And there was no one switched sides on that one. How do I think she did? And how will it move the election? We'll have to see. I think you have to look at this sit down through two different lenses. The first one would be the hypothetical lens that isn't happening, that this is a presidential election where she is running against a human who says human things and talks about human issues like a George W. Bush or a Mitt Romney or a John McCain or, just a run-of-the-mill Republican. If that was her opponent, I would say she did an awful job. However, her opponent is that thing. So the goals are a little different. What annoyed me was I thought she should have chosen a lane of discussion and stuck with it. Either be Donald Trump heavy, go into him, and just keep talking, just make him, just beat him down like I know she can, or don't even bring up his name. Have him watch it and just be mad that they're not talking about him. I would have gone with number 2 because the debate is in a week and a half, and that'll be her opportunity to beat him down. I would have just made him I wouldn't have even said his name. That would have gotten to him. The guy who shits on a golden toilet and graffitis his name all over every building would hate to not be talked about. But talking bad about him, he doesn't like either. He'd rather you talk bad about him, I think, than ignore him. But both get under his skin. However, the shooting him down option, figuratively, is what she's going to have the opportunity to do during the debate. So I would have gone with the other option, just don't even bring him up. And then he'd be watching it, waiting till they talk about him, and he wouldn't like it. So when it started, it came off as rehearsed, and that she was a little nervous. She obviously had bullet points in her mind she wanted to hit, and she was obviously thinking about them when Dana Basch asked the first question. I don't remember exactly what the first question was, but you could see that she just went into a rehearsed monologue, if you would. I don't remember what the question was. I do remember that she didn't seem to answer it. But then, just after the first question, she was able to get into her groove. Okay? And the first issue I remember, there's a lot of, off memory, was when she was talking about fracking, and she made a statement against fracking in 2019. However, when she joined Joe Biden to run for president, admittedly, she went along with the administration. And her current plan is to continue fracking when she wins the election. Now, the Trump campaign has tried to make her look like a flip-flopper, and I think this would have been a good opportunity for her to say, and it was a missed opportunity, to say, yes, in 2019, based on everything I saw, all the evidence I had, my conclusion was that fracking should be eliminated. After becoming the vice president, upon further reflection, I reanalyzed the situation and came to a different conclusion. Boom, fine. That's not a flip-flop. That's a, okay, I didn't know that about that previously. Let me reanalyze. A flip-flop is having 3 different abortion stances within the past 12 hours. I don't know which presidential candidate did that. One of the other ones running for president. That's flip-flopping. Wisdom, on the other hand, is being able to learn and then, if necessary, alter how you feel about something when new evidence comes to light. As opposed, what wisdom is not is looking at the polls of the day and seeing what's popular and saying that's your opinion when you have no idea what you're talking about. Once again, I've never been big on faulting politicians for learning something new and reaching a new conclusion. I think it's a good thing. What I'm against is just trying to pander. And I don't believe she did that. So I believe that was a missed opportunity to say, yeah, I learned something new, I learned more information, and my opinion changed. No matter what, Fox News is going to say you did a horrible, awful job. So, you know they're going to say that, so why not just put it out there? I really think we need to stop shaming our politicians for doing research and being too scared to change their stance on something based on moral principle, not based on polls. Then we have the situation in Gaza. This would be difficult for anyone to answer because she's running for president. So just playing politics, you want to alienate as few people as possible because you'll always alienate somebody. And I believe this is where she could have distanced herself a little from the Biden administration, of which she's a part of, but she is not the ultimate decision maker. I would have gone a little harder on the Israeli government and made a guarantee to withhold the sending of weapons until an agreement is reached and call for a ceasefire. However, she's also part of the Biden administration, who has been sending the weapons over, and she's part of the administration, but not the ultimate decision maker. And I think we're at like 62% of the country want there to be a ceasefire, so it's that would be a popular stance to have, but it would go against the administration she's currently serving. So, on this issue, I think she should have come off harder and distanced herself from Joe Biden in the nicest way possible. You know, and there's plenty of rehearsed lines to disagree with someone you really care about. Which is saying, I really care and respect this individual. No two people agree on everything. This is something I honestly believe we should be a little stronger on when it comes to requirements that we need Israel to follow. Ugh, my brain fart. Okay, see? It's not that easy at times. Okay, what she should have said was, Joe Biden is a mentor to me. I love him. This is one issue where we differ slightly, as I believe that we should not send any weapons to Gaza until a ceasefire is called for. Joe feels very similar to that, however, not identical. I serve at the pleasure of the president. Joe Biden is the president. Boom! I don't think that would have alienated... Well, that would have alienated the hard Israeli supporters, but I don't think she has them anyway. Because a strong supporter of Israel, who thinks that the genocide is okay, they're not voting for Harris anyway. And they're not gainable votes. So with like 65% of the country wanting there to be a ceasefire, I would have taken, because you can't distance yourself from your own administration on a lot of issues. I limit it to one, and I would have chosen the situation in Gaza to put a little distance between myself or herself and President Biden. Okay. That eases me into when she was asked about when Joe Biden called her to say that he was withdrawing from the presidential race, and then asked whether or not he offered his endorsement in that very phone call. Obviously, the answer is no, because that would have been public right away. She doesn't want to say no. I would have refused to answer that question. And I believe that refusing to answer that question is not something that can be held against her if worded the right way. If she were to say, that was a very personal conversation between myself and my friend. Don't call him the friend. Everything's about wording. Between that and my friend. And the details of that conversation, I'm sure historians will be talking about for years. But it has absolutely no bearing on how I would govern. So I'd rather, for as long as I can, keep that one between Joe and I. Boom! And I don't think anyone would then Fox News would just look silly if they then showed that and said, she's hiding something. No, she's looking human. Or if you were going the other way, as I described earlier, and just going to dig into Trump, you could have done this. You could have said, no. No, he did not. And he didn't because I didn't ask. Because in that moment, I knew that my friend had just made the most difficult decision of his life. And Joe Biden is not just the president and me, his vice president. He is my friend. And at that moment, I knew that my friend was going through something difficult. And it would have been inappropriate for me to even ask for it. And I think that would have been a great answer. What that would do is he would try to make the comparison to Trump. Because in the weird hypothetical world where Trump is Harris and Biden were to call his vice president Trump and say he was not going to run for a second term, you think Trump could pull off, I didn't ask about my future. I cared about my friend more than I did myself in that moment. No, it would just be comical. But I don't know what would be the best way to make that connection, or just let the people make it, or I got it. She should have had Tim Walz be like, could you imagine your opponent saying that? And then boom, connection made. So I would have, but I feel like she went in halfway. A lot of these answers I felt were like half answers. Where she, said, it was a very personal conversation, but then didn't say whether or not they talked about endorsements. Like, one thing that bothered me, and see, I can be critical of candidates I support, was that there was a lot of attempting to thread the needle when it wasn't necessary, and not threading the needle when it was necessary. So, okay. Now let's talk about Tim Walz. Every day I wake up scared that the shoe's going to drop and there's going to be some huge scandal on him, and my faith in humanity that has risen back just a little will go back. He was fine. I mean, the first question was about this pretty much cockamamie story about that he misspoke about his military rank, but nobody in the military or army has come out against him, so I don't know, but that's not even a story anymore. And it was basically something the Trump campaign threw out there, and no fish bit. Second was the fact that when he was first introduced, he said his wife went through IVF treatment in order to conceive their daughter, but they actually went through another medical treatment for the same exact goal. Now, fertilization treatment is something that's affected my family, close members of my family, very strongly. It is necessary. It is a beautiful thing. And I don't know the difference between the two. All I know is the other one, I guess IUI, I had never heard of. So this one is just like saying there's no consequence in just listing a term that everyone understands that accomplishes the same goal. Again, the Republicans threw out the fishing pole, nothing bit. But this is this was where Tim Walz got strong. Asking about the military thing, he's blamed it on grammar. Not really grammar, it's a word. But forgivable, I've never served, and I haven't seen anyone who has served fault him for that. So until they do, I'm not. Subject to change, of course. And speaking about the treatments, I fault him zero. And he was able to then talk about his character and say, you saw all the football players. Talk about his son, who I think Gus Walz may be the most popular person in America right now. I'll take second fiddle. Okay. So, overall, what did I think about how she did? Again, if she was running against a human, I would say this was not a good performance. However, she's running against that thing. So I have to look at it a little differently. And I believe she did what needed to be done to get to the next step of her campaign. I said earlier, I don't know about whether or not she took too long to do a sit down. Well, now I believe she should sit down with everybody she can. She should be doing 3 podcasts a day. The one thing about the Donald Trump 2016 campaign was you never didn't see it. He was always somewhere speaking. Not this current blob of a sushi roll, but in 2016, when he was still an awful human being, but at least entertaining and vibrant somewhat, he was everywhere. That's what she has to do now. And that also comes with the advantage that if, let's say she says something that doesn't come off well, it'll be diluted in all the appearances and the mental patient saying insane things that no one will have the opportunity to dissect every single sit-down she gives because there will be so many of them. Everyone's able to sit down and dissect this one because it was the first one. But if she's doing like 3 or 4 of these a day, they won't have the time. One thing I like is that she didn't fall into identity politics. To me, this candidacy is historic. When she wins, it'll be even more historic. I do not think I would see the first female president after 2016. But we know this. All you need to do is look at her and you see there's a woman of color. She's not making that a focal point of her campaign, and I think that's a good thing because we already know. We already know how historic this is. One thing about the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016, which of course I supported, but I was critical of, was I think they went too deep into the identity of, first woman president, glass ceiling, which, as I said, would have been amazing, but it's not like anyone didn't know Hillary Clinton was a woman, or we haven't had a female president yet. So I like the fact that when Dana Basch brought up the fact that Trump said, she was black, said that she wasn't black until she was, or whatever the dude said, she just wrote him off. Like, Trump being Trump, whatever, next. I love that. That's my favorite part of the whole debate. The whole sit down was just making Trump like that's not even worthy of talking about. Sort of like, Mom, why did you throw out my TV guide from 2 weeks ago? And if you don't know what the TV guide is, boy, do I feel old, and look it up. Oh, you wanted that? It was 2 weeks old. Wow, I didn't know anyone wanted that old thing. Like, just make him seem less significant. And I think that was my favorite part. When she was like, just Trump being Trump, whatever. Because I really believe that this sit down should have been about her and her policies and humanizing her, and just, he's self-destructing. So, again, I was talking about identity politics, and then we have to move to the whole, they go low, we go high. I think that should apply to two people, and two people alone. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They should not let themselves be pulled into his nonsense, his name calling and all that. However, you got plenty of people who can. One of them is just waiting to, and his name is Barack Obama. I would unleash Obama onto the circuit and let him make fun of Trump's DICK size in every swing state. And then Kamala should just be above the fray. And Obama's been waiting 12 years to just go into Trump. And he had his first taste of it at the DNC. And he wants more. So use him as a surrogate to go low while you stay above the fray. And my Tim, stays above the fray. That's how I would play it. But what do I know? Now on the flip side, what's going on in the Insane campaign? So, simultaneously, Trump was giving a speech to a much smaller crowd than he will say he gave it to, in which he went from, I was trying to follow it, people used to like bacon, but they can't buy bacon anymore, or they stopped eating bacon, to it's because of windmills, because when windmill energy is bad, because when the windmill stops, there's a problem, although that shows right there he knows nothing about energy, because it's we don't use the energy we don't use the energy simultaneously when it's made. Energy is stored. That's how windmill technology works. It creates the energy which is stored, not used simultaneously. So, whatever, just showing that another reason why he's not qualified to do anything. Then he started talking about San Francisco and how, I shouldn't say this, and how I have a building there, and I just want to let anyone in San Francisco know, if you're protesting, do not do it at 555 California Street in San Francisco. Don't do it. Again, if you're planning on organizing a protest, the place you don't want to do it is 555 California Street. Because that's not the Trump property that he was talking about. Although his name is plastered all over it. And before people say, are you doxing Trump? No, I'm not. That A, his name is splashed all over it. And B, he just talked about it. And C, he doesn't live there. So, again, if you're going to protest, do it anywhere but 555 California Street in San Francisco. Basically, the Trump campaign is just, I don't even know the wording to describe what's going on over there. It's become sad almost. And it's just watching Trump completely lose his mind. I can't take pleasure in that on a personal level, and I want to. But, I just try not to take pleasure in anybody's personal pain. But there's an amount of political patting on the shoulder. That's it. Because Trump literally gave 3 or 4 different stances on abortion in the past 12 hours. He can't stay on message. He isn't entertaining anymore. Like, at least in 2016, he was funny. Now he's like a washed-up comedian who every laugh he gets is a pity laugh or an awkward laugh. No one takes him seriously. His crowd sizes have gone to almost nothing. And it's just like, I went from watching him, laughing at him, to just being like, that's sad. It's sad how pathetic he looks right now. I hope at that age I don't look like that. And then I go back, and then I'm reminded about how he almost destroyed democracy and hates our country and all the bad things he's done, and suddenly I don't feel as bad anymore. So, will this move the needle? Going back to Harris. And then I want to talk about one last thing that Trump said, which could be dangerous. Okay? Did it move the needle? No. I'm going to say that this sit-down will have zero effect on the ultimate results of the presidential election. It was just a box that had to be checked off. It had to get done. But just from a subjective standpoint, it was not a home run like the convention was, but it wasn't an abysmal failure like the RNC was. It accomplished the goal to move her forward in the campaign. When people vote, I don't think anyone will be thinking about this. Because between now and then, he's gonna say at least 100 offensive, ridiculous things. And tweet out on X, whatever. Do you know he was re-truthing or whatever? Like QAnon posts and posts about oral sex and the two females he's run against for president, and just like stuff I probably wouldn't have even found funny in high school. Well, maybe in high school. But we're seeing the self-destruction of somebody who at one point people thought had a brain. Worst decision he ever made was to run for president. Really was. One thing I really liked that Kamala did. Now, this is one of those moments that could have been pre-planned or could have actually been a accidental gift. I don't know. I don't know how much of her interview was pre-planned, but she called Dana Basch, accidentally, as it appeared, and she quickly corrected herself and apologized. That seems small, but in contrast, you have the fluffernutter purposefully making fun of and butchering Kamala Harris's name and the pronunciation of her name. So you could just put that comparison, you know? They should really just do a side-by-side. Him making fun of Kamala Harris's name and Kamala Harris respectfully correcting herself after she accidentally mispronounced Dana Basch's name. Who seems more presidential? Again, was that moment prepared? I don't know. Because I don't know how much of this she knew about beforehand. Before I wrap up, I want to talk about how the conservative media is misrepresenting things already. First, they're saying she did awful. What a bad job. She needed her babysitter, Tim Walz. Okay, pause. Let's look at that one first. She needed her babysitter. Okay, so they're implying that if a presidential nominee sits down with their vice presidential nominee, they need a babysitter. Okay, well, Trump has run, well, counting this time, twice as the non-incumbent, and with two different running mates, and did identical interviews, as in presidential nominee and vice presidential nominee together, both times. But for some reason, when Kamala Harris does one with Tim Walz, which is the tradition that the first interview, once there is a two-person ticket, is the two people. You can argue whether or not it took too long, but the first interview, once a ticket is put together, is joint. But for some reason, she needs a babysitter. When Trump did these, Obama and Biden did these. Like, this is just how it works. It only feels different because of the time gap. Is that sexist and misogynistic to anyone who says that? I would say yes. But I don't know what other people feel. Second thing was just, a little funny moment on Fox News where they had Mike Johnson on and they had a split screen, and it was right after the sit down was aired. Because right afterwards she went and did a massive rally. So you have a split screen of Mike Johnson talking about how she's hiding while simultaneously she's at a rally. It just made the Republican establishment look silly. She's hiding, other than the fact that she's being recorded by the same company that's recording me right now in front of like 20,000 people. Other than that, she's hiding. It was a funny visual because Mike Johnson just looked silly. I had another point, and it's going to annoy me, that I can't seem to remember what it is right now. Either way, I think that this accomplished what it needed to, but now she's got to turn up the heat when it comes to press conferences and interviews. She has to, and just be out there, podcasts. That's really the new medium of how to get to people. She needs to go on Pod Save America. She needs to go on The Bulwark. She needs to go on Ian Zev's life. Oh. And his 90 fans. Now that the first interview has been checked off, there's no more excuses. Okay? The fact that this was a campaign put together on the fly, I'm willing to go with you on that up until now. Now it's time. And I think she will. I think that she will start, she'll start going around more and more and more. And so will Trump. And she will continue to look like an adult, and he will not. Because even if I thought she did a bad job talking about the issues, which I don't think she did a bad job, I just don't think it was that great, she still came off like an adult who could talk about adult things. Very low bar, but one that, fluffer testes doesn't meet. So, being she's running against him, the bar was so low that she met it and exceeded it. But had this been against a mammal, I would not think she did a good job at all. But these weird times we're in. It really is. So, again, I'm tired. I know this was a little rambly. Just wanted to talk to everybody about it. Yeah, get out there. We only have about 2.5 months left. Less. And then, well, then Trump's going to say he won no matter what, and the lawsuits start, and that's going to be fun. But that I actually am planning on doing a presentation on the lawsuits that I already know they're going to bring when Kamala wins. Also, you find it interesting that they never met each other? That took me by surprise for about 2 seconds. The bulwark right there. Until I realized the reason they never met each other was because, as opposed to everyone else, with the exception of John Adams, who has been president and then alive when their presidency ended, they attended the inauguration of the next administration in the peaceful transition of power. But wait, baby man was such a baby, he took his stuff early and left because he didn't want to see Joe Biden inauguration. And that's where they would have met each other, at the inauguration, which his feelings were too hurt, and he thought he should destroy our democracy, instead of admitting what everyone knows, that he lost a free and fair election. That being said, she is by far the strongest choice, and I'm feeling more confident than I did yesterday. And I don't know if that's because she was able to check off this box, or he really has been or he's just really self-destructing this week. Either way, I'll take it. See you all tomorrow.